The corridors of the Orion detention complex hummed with a low, almost sarcastic monotone, like the ship itself was chuckling at the incompetence of its human passengers. Lieutenant Marcus Hale shifted uneasily, his boots squeaking on the polished metal floor, a sound that made him instantly self-conscious. He had spent half his life following orders, yet nothing in his training had prepared him for standing in front of an alien prisoner who, by all appearances, could have been human, if you ignored the long, elegant ears that arched from the sides of her head and twitched like delicate instruments attuned to some secret melody of the universe. Lysera sat cross-legged in the center of her cell, her posture unnervingly relaxed for someone who was scheduled for execution in less than 24 hours. Her eyes, sharp and iridescent in the dim lighting, followed Marcus as though measuring his worth, like a cat inspecting a toy it had yet to decide was interesting. "Ah," she said, tilting her head in that infuriatingly calm way that made people either like her immediately or wish for an emergency evacuation. "The appointed observer. I was hoping for someone dull, but fate has a sense of irony." "And you, Lieutenant Hale, seemed surprisingly sarcastic for a soldier." Marcus shifted his weight, attempting to muster an authority he didn't feel. "Sarcasm is a survival mechanism," he said, voice tight, realizing halfway through that it sounded more like a confession than a defense. "Also, boredom tends to make me cruel." Her ears flicked, catching some invisible nuance of the air between them. "Boredom is an interesting concept," she mused. "I've spent decades evading death, yet boredom finds me in a cell. Perhaps the universe is just messing with my sense of timing." She smirked, and Marcus caught himself involuntarily smiling back. The automated doors slid closed behind him with a hiss that sounded suspiciously like a sigh of relief. Marcus's hand hovered near his sidearm, more out of habit than need. He had been briefed. Lysera had been convicted of interstellar crimes that spanned from sabotage to intelligence leaks. Her trial had been a galaxy-spanning affair, involving holographic testimonies, quantum-recorded evidence, and bureaucratic arguments that could make the most seasoned diplomat's head spin. Yet here she was, lounging as though waiting for tea, while Marcus tried to feel the appropriate combination of fear and disdain. "Do you like jokes, Lieutenant?" she asked suddenly, her voice light, a stark contrast to the gravity of the situation. Marcus blinked. "Depends. Are we talking death row jokes or bad space crew jokes?" She grinned, a flash of teeth that seemed almost too sharp for comfort. "Both. I find humor is most necessary when death is imminent and humans are involved." "I'll start simple. Why did the starship captain refuse to leave the bar?" Marcus, wary but intrigued, shrugged. "I don't know why." She had misplaced her graviton license and didn't want anyone to notice her wingspan in 0G. She tilted her head back as if the joke were just a warm-up for something far more devastatingly funny, and Marcus had to resist rolling his eyes, which was difficult considering how ridiculous the image was. "You've got a strange sense of humor for someone about to be incinerated," he said. "Most people go through denial, bargaining, and then despair. You seem chipper." Lysera's ears twitched again, and she leaned forward slightly. "Ah, but despair is dull, Lieutenant. I prefer entertainment. Besides, I have a confession to make. I want you to hear it." Marcus froze, uncertain if he'd heard her correctly. "Confession now. Should I be pulling a quill and interstellar ink?" "No, no quills," she said, laughing. The sound was musical, carrying a resonance he felt in his chest. "Just listen, and I insist it's only for your ears. I do not trust the council, nor the guards, nor your superior officers with what I have to say." Marcus frowned, and why me? She regarded him with a calculating tilt of the head, ears quivering. "Because, Lieutenant, I've studied humans. Some are obedient, some are cruel, some are easily bribed. You laugh at danger. That makes you uniquely unreliable, yet oddly trustworthy. You also make a decent cup of synth coffee, I've noticed, though that may be circumstantial." He coughed, uncomfortably aware that she had been observing him far longer than he had observed her. I didn't realize my coffee-making skills were under intergalactic surveillance." "Everything is under surveillance," she said, leaning back, eyes glinting. "The galaxy is a stage, and I am merely waiting for someone clever enough to appreciate my lines." "What?" Marcus ran a hand through his hair. "So, you want to confess, that's something, but I need to know you're not just trying to trick me into something, like escaping or turning me into a meal for your people." "What?" Lysera's laughter filled the cell. "I assure you, Lieutenant, I have no intention of chewing on your limbs. My people are vegetarian, mostly. It's complicated. The point is, you'll hear a story that could get you court-martialed or worse, but you will also laugh. At least a little, or groan, that's acceptable too." Marcus took a deep breath, thinking of all the interstellar regulations he had memorized, all the times he had followed orders without question. None of that mattered here. This was uncharted territory, an alien woman sentenced to death and trusting her secrets to him, and doing so with a humor that was both disarming and suspicious. He nodded slowly. All right, I'll listen. But I swear if this involves anything quantumly illegal, I'm blaming the coffee machine. Her ears twitched again, almost in approval. Good, humor makes everything easier to digest. Now let me start at the beginning, though I warn you, my beginning involves hijacking a shuttle, outsmarting a mercenary clan, and a very confused space raccoon. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Space raccoon. What? Yes, she said with a perfectly straight face. He was my co-pilot, very opinionated about graviton flux and lousy at star map navigation. And with that, Lysera began to weave her tale, and Marcus listened, alternating between incredulous laughter and thoughtful frowns. Outside the cell, the galaxy continued its cold, indifferent spin, but inside an unlikely bond was forming, one tempered by humor, danger, and the slow, deliberate revelation of secrets that could shake the very foundations of interstellar law. Hours passed unnoticed. The jokes became darker, the escapades more daring, yet the humor never left. Marcus found himself not only a confidant but a reluctant participant in a narrative that felt both impossible and inevitable. He realized somewhere between a laugh at a space raccoon's misadventures and a tense pause at a near-death scenario that Lysera's story was far more than a confession. It was an invitation to question, to defy, and perhaps to feel something forbidden. By the time the first rotation cycle ended, Marcus knew one immutable truth. The woman with the long ears, the sharp mind, and the deadly charm had changed the trajectory of his life. And somewhere in the middle of interstellar danger and sarcastic banter, he began to wonder whether he would ever survive the confession, or if he even wanted to. Marcus awoke to the gentle vibration of the ship's hull, a reminder that the Orion detention complex drifted silently through the outer rim of the Halcyon sector. He rubbed his eyes and looked around the cell. Lysera was already awake, perched on the edge of the observation platform like some mischievous bird. Her ears twitched, catching the subtlest hums of the ship's systems, and she gave him a grin that was both irritatingly smug and irresistibly magnetic. "Morning," she said, voice smooth as a graviton stream. "You slept well, I assume, or did your dreams involve endless reports and awkward salute drills?" Marcus groaned. "Mostly reports. And a nightmare where a space raccoon lectured me on quantum navigation." "Ah," she said, nodding solemnly, "your subconscious is entirely correct. That raccoon is notoriously opinionated and holds grudges. You've earned its judgment." What? He leaned against the wall, trying not to smile. Somehow, the absurdity of the moment, the ridiculousness of the raccoon, and the impossible calm of an alien woman facing execution made the fear easier to manage. "All right, Lysera," he said, "where did we leave off? The shuttle heist." "Yes," she said, tilting her head so that her ears framed her face like delicate arcs of some ancient technology. "I had just outwitted the mercenary crew using nothing but a broken flux compass, a borrowed graviton wrench, and a very inconveniently attached space raccoon. She paused dramatically, made the jump calculations wrong, but I corrected them, and we arrived at the smuggler's port one step ahead of the Council's enforcers." Marcus laughed despite himself. "A raccoon, a wrench, and you, that's improbable. Did you at least buy it a uniform?" Lysera raised an eyebrow. "Naturally, even minor co-conspirators deserve proper attire, otherwise morale plummets and no one wants to steal interstellar cargo with disgruntled animals." What? They laughed together, a sound that carried strangely through the quiet hum of the detention corridor, forming a fragile pocket of normalcy amid the looming execution. Yet beneath the levity, Marcus sensed the gravity of what she was revealing. Each tale was more than a series of daring escapes. They were coded messages of rebellion, each act a challenge to authorities who valued control over justice. "I suppose I should be offended," Marcus said, leaning closer to hear her, "but your escapades are kind of impressive. Though a little reckless." "Reckless, yes," she admitted with a grin, "but efficiency is overrated. Besides, if I were careful, I wouldn't have stories worth telling, and you, Lieutenant, wouldn't be so entertained." He raised an eyebrow. "Entertained? Or dangerously invested?" Lysera's smile deepened. "Ah, there's the complication of human curiosity. You are dangerously invested, Marcus Hale, but don't worry, I am worth it." What? Marcus felt the heat rise in his chest, the unspoken tension of attraction threading itself into every joke, every story. He tried to hide it with sarcasm. "I'll take your word for it. Though if I end up in a court-martial, I'll be sending you the bill." She laughed again, a soft, ringing sound that seemed to echo through the cell. "I expect nothing less." Her story continued, each anecdote layered with humor and audacity. She described infiltrating a council stronghold disguised as a diplomat, outwitting guards with a combination of holographic decoys and a particularly sharp sense of timing. At one point, Marcus had to stop her from choking on her laughter when she recounted how the security chief had fallen into a zero-gravity waste disposal chute while trying to apprehend her. "You're terrible," Marcus said, shaking his head. "In any other context, I'd have you arrested for reckless endangerment of civilians, and apparently raccoons." "Ah," she said, tapping her temple, "but context is everything. That chute accident prevented a diplomatic incident that could have escalated into a minor war. You see, humor is not just an indulgence, it's a tactical advantage." Marcus allowed himself a smirk. "I'll keep that in mind when the council asks why I helped a condemned alien escape." Her ears flicked in what he was starting to recognize as amusement and curiosity intertwined. "Escape," she said softly, "is not the goal yet. Awareness, understanding, and trust, that is the challenge. If you survive my story, perhaps then we can discuss practicalities." Hours passed, and Marcus found himself absorbed not just in her narrative, but in the nuances of her being. Her ears moved with expressive precision, flicking toward sounds imperceptible to him, conveying subtle changes in mood. Her eyes, sharp and shimmering with a color he couldn't quite name, held his gaze with unsettling intensity, blending humor, cunning, and something intimate he didn't yet want to define. "Tell me," Marcus said, leaning closer, "all these stories, were they really about rebellion, or just proving something?" Lysera's lips curved knowingly. "A little of both. Every heist, every infiltration, every accident was a test. Of power, of loyalty, of comprehension, and sometimes, just sometimes, of patience. And humor, Lieutenant, do not forget humor, you cannot survive without it." Marcus shook his head, smiling despite the tension. "I don't know if I should admire you, fear you, or arrest you for sheer audacity." "You may choose all three," she replied lightly. "Most humans are too polite to do so, but you, Lieutenant, you surprise me." What? As the rotation cycle continued, Marcus began to understand the duality of Lysera's existence. A condemned criminal, a master strategist, and yet a woman who wielded levity like a weapon. Her confession was more than a catalogue of crimes. It was a lesson in survival, morality, and the delicate art of balancing life and death with laughter. A subtle alarm buzzed somewhere in the complex, and Lysera's ears twitched sharply, pivoting toward the sound. "Ah," she said, "even here, the universe insists on reminding us of its absurd timing. Duty calls, and so do the guards, presumably to ruin my breakfast." Marcus chuckled. "I guess that means story time is over, temporarily." "Temporarily," she said, rising gracefully. "But remember, Lieutenant, the best parts are yet to come. You are invested now, whether you admit it or not. And investment, my dear human, makes the tale infinitely more enjoyable." Marcus followed her gaze to the cell door, where the hum of technology and the glint of surveillance reminded him that this was no ordinary assignment. Yet as he looked at Lysera, with her long, expressive ears, radiant intelligence, and mischievous grin, he felt an unfamiliar thrill. Danger had never been so entertaining. And as they prepared to face whatever routine checks or intrusive inspectors would come, Marcus realized something crucial. This confession was more than a story. It was a bridge, fragile and improbable, between human and alien, soldier and criminal, life and death, humor and horror. By the time the cycle ended, Marcus was no longer merely a soldier assigned to watch a condemned alien. He was a witness to audacity, a reluctant participant in rebellion, and perhaps the only person in the galaxy capable of understanding Lysera's full story. And with that understanding came the unspoken question neither dared voice aloud: how far would he go to protect her, and at what cost to himself? The alarms blared like a chorus of disgruntled starship engineers, and Marcus could feel the ship's hull shudder slightly beneath his boots. Lysera's ears twitched sharply, pivoting in all directions, reading vibrations and electromagnetic anomalies he could barely comprehend. "Ah," she said, tilting her head with perfect composure, "the universe reminds us that timing is, indeed, everything. Or perhaps it simply enjoys watching humans panic." Marcus adjusted his blaster, though he knew the weapon was mostly ceremonial here. "And you?" he asked, half expecting her to vanish in a cloud of quantum smoke or teleportation. She rose gracefully, her long ears forming delicate arcs that seemed to channel some invisible current. "I prefer dramatic entrances, not hasty exits. Besides, we have work to do. Let's ensure the guards and the council don't ruin breakfast again, shall we?" Their plan, hatched quietly over days of confession and shared humor, was audacious yet absurdly simple. Use Lysera's intimate knowledge of the detention complex, her subtle control over the ship's minor systems, and Marcus's unremarkable human ability to improvise under pressure. They would create a diversion, slip through the corridors unnoticed, and confront the council's enforcers long enough to transmit the evidence Lysera had gathered, proof of corruption that implicated powerful factions across multiple sectors. They moved quickly but with a calm precision that belied the gravity of their situation. Lysera's fingers danced over consoles with such fluidity that Marcus swore she was coaxing the ship itself into complicity. "I swear," Marcus muttered, "you could hack the stars if you wanted." She laughed, a sound that shimmered against the hum of the complex. "Perhaps, but that would be boring, and boredom, as you know, is the true enemy." What? They reached the main conduit leading to the council's secure communication array. Lysera paused, her ears flicking toward the vibrations running through the metal floor. "We have company," she said casually as two guards rounded the corner with blasters raised. Marcus grinned. "Let me handle the boring part." He flicked a switch, triggering a cascade of gravity pulse emitters they had rigged over the last rotation cycle. The guards were flung into the ceiling panels like ragdolls in zero-G, grumbling, cursing, and somehow keeping their dignity intact. Lysera clapped quietly. "Elegance, Marcus, truly human in your chaos." What? They pressed forward, weaving through dimly lit corridors that smelled faintly of ozone and the faint tang of recycled air. Marcus kept watch while Lysera manipulated the security protocols, her ears quivering as they received every tiny anomaly, every potential hazard. "You're extraordinary," he said, not for the first time. "I mean, your audacity alone could start a galactic war." "And yet here we are," she replied, her tone both teasing and serious. "Avoiding one while making a few small mischiefs, it's practically art." The communication hub was just ahead. Lysera inserted a slim interface tool, one Marcus didn't recognize, into the console. The holographic display flickered to life, showing encrypted files, council directives, and evidence of embezzlement, cover-ups, and manipulated planetary defenses. "This," she said softly, "is why they wanted me silenced. And now you will be a witness, my dear lieutenant. Your humor and curiosity have made you invaluable." Marcus leaned close, eyes scanning the files. "I've read about corruption," he muttered, "but this is galaxy-level absurdity." "What?" "Indeed," Lysera said, flicking a switch that transmitted the evidence to a neutral galactic tribunal, "and they will not be able to deny it. Humor aside, I may be condemned, but my work here is not yet finished." What? Suddenly, a warning buzzed. The execution protocols had been triggered. Someone had overridden the system, accelerating the countdown. Marcus cursed, glancing at Lysera. "We've got minutes, not hours." She tilted her head, ears quivering. "Minutes are excellent, they force creativity. Let's make this entertaining, shall we?" In the span of what felt like moments, they improvised a series of gravity pulses, pressure diversions, and optical illusions that sent the guards into confusion, chasing holographic decoys, tripping over their own boots, and issuing panicked radio messages. Marcus found himself laughing amid the chaos, the absurdity of it all making adrenaline feel almost like champagne in his veins. "You really do love this kind of chaos, don't you?" Lysera smirked, ears flicking. "I thrive in it. Besides, a story without conflict is merely a list of accomplishments, and we both know that's dreadfully dull." They reached the final control node, and Marcus watched as Lysera initiated the lockout of the execution chamber. The countdown halted, frozen in mid-digit display, and a single line of light on the console blinked green. She exhaled almost imperceptibly, a rare sign of relief. "Time," she said softly, "is for now on our side." What? Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders, but the exhilaration was tinged with awe and something unnameable. He realized, through the chaos and humor, the danger and the intimate confessions, that his understanding of duty, loyalty, and morality had shifted. He was no longer a soldier blindly following orders. He was a participant in a narrative that demanded judgment, compassion, and courage. Lysera turned to him, her long ears catching the faintest electrical hum, eyes glinting with a mix of mischief and sincerity. "You've changed, Marcus Hale. You've begun to see the layers beneath commands and consequences. You are delightfully unpredictable, I like that." He smiled, though it was tinged with the gravity of what lay ahead. "And you've changed me, Lysera. I've learned that following orders isn't always right, that humor can be a weapon, and that sometimes doing the impossible is necessary. Mostly, I've learned that some confessions are worth the risk." What? The ship's corridors quieted as the alarms faded. The guards were disoriented. The tribunal had received